Hello, welcome to the program. My name is Michael Finney. Today, I am joined by developer Miguel Lara. Would you like to say hello, sir?
Hey, how's it going? My name's Miguel. I go by Angry Penguin or AP on Twitter/X. And yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us and look forward to this conversation. Why don't you give us a little bit of bio on you? The things you like, the things that you're interested in. We know you're a developer. We know you're into AI, but maybe give us a little bit of preamble and lead up to how you arrived at these interests, at this career, and the rest.
Yeah, totally. So I got really started with generative AI with Stable Diffusion. So actually, it might have even been Midjourney too. So Midjourney might have been the gateway drug that I took for just interacting with these systems. And I remember just being able to enter a prompt into it, and it was crazy because it was the Discord interface too. And then Dolly 2 came, I think, shortly after. And that one was pretty badass because it had the canvas. And so you could kind of stitch things together, do the out painting, in painting thing. And then I kind of immediately saw how the potential of these systems. So I was like, okay, how do I learn more? And at the time it was kind of really complex to get these things running. And the models just weren't nearly as good. The open source models weren't nearly as good as say Dolly 2. And that kind of really changed when Stable Diffusion 1.5 came out, or it might have been Stable Diffusion 1.4. So yeah, when that dropped, all of a sudden you could get this stuff running on your machine if you had something strong enough. I didn't. So I would use completely Colab notebooks. And so then started playing around with that, fell in love with it. And then when Dream Booth came out, Dream Booth was this mechanism to fine tune the Stable Diffusion models. That was sort of a really big light bulb moment for me, because all of a sudden you could insert custom IP, insert custom styles into these diffusion models, and now you could start tackling use cases, because before it was sort of this slot machine, and a lot of people still call it to this day, where you just get random results. But by implementing fine tuning into it, you can now make it more domain specific. And yeah, I just really started tinkering with the systems, doing fun things with them. I always have had a creative draw to it, and trying to figure out how you can pin a use case to it rather than just using it just for the sake of using it. And so that's kind of led me to where I am today. I just have been hacking on stuff. My technical proficiency isn't super high. I'm more of a hacker that has been able to do the things I do through large language models like Claude and ChatGPT, mostly Claude these days. But yeah, that's my bio. Yeah, I just am really interested in these systems, and then just really have a strong draw to it, and it's just so fun for me to hack on these stuff.
Let me ask you about your creative background. Do you work in other mediums? Are you a visual artist? Anything like that?
No, I'm honest. I've always wanted to be honest. And it's funny when people are pick up a pencil. I could, but I could barely draw. But it's really awesome because it gives me I think that the generative AI, the thing that's unique with it is that I can make a system now that can give me what's in what I have I'm imagining of, right? And it's not just prompts; it's entire workflows. It's getting a custom LoRa. Now they're before they would be custom models, fine-tuned models. Now they're just LoRa's. Putting a custom LoRa into it, doing the sampler 2 times, just these intriguing little workflows, adding more noise to it, right? I'm not an artist by trade. My background's actually in economics. That's what I went to college for. And it's really interesting for me to just be able to do the things that I do with these with code almost. It's really crazy.
So that's kind of wild, honestly. The fact that you found yourself in both a technical space in regards to generative AI, but also a creative space in regards to generative AI. And that's not necessarily related to anything that you were doing prior to this coming up. That's, I would say, incredibly inspirational for anybody who maybe didn't perceive themselves as either technical or creative in the grand scheme of things. So, um, before this stuff was coming out, you're saying you didn't do any development, you weren't into any creative outlets, you didn't write, you didn't play music, nothing like that?
I mean, I played music here and there. Like growing up, I tried to play the guitar, wasn't good at it. Couldn't really like afford the lessons for the guitar stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think I'd always had this like creative appeal, but it, it was just this like, it's just so easy to do the thing once like this new wave of technology came out, right? Like writing code. I mean, like I was familiar with Python to do very basic economic analysis with like notebooks, but now I could take it like a whole nother step, right? And then um, I don't know, just leverage the knowledge of the model to get what I wanted through like a lot of trial and error and a lot of like bashing, buttons on the keyboard. But yeah, like there's this like whole category of like people that are now able to do creative things due to like the advent of generative AI. And I think that more people might start to lean into it. I'm not really too sure, but I definitely have and have found like a niche in that, right? So yeah, I'm kind of unique, or maybe I'm not so unique.
I think that you are unique, but also that a lot of people are discovering that they are also unique as a result of these tools, right?
Yeah, totally, totally.
So let's say, let's ask, what have you been making creatively, artistically, that you are happy with, or that has really driven you to kind of pursue a particular line of style or aesthetics or anything like that? Just curious.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm more so like use case driven. So the most recent thing that I'm working on right now is trying to figure out like how we can reconstruct like the pipeline that HeyGen is doing, like with virtual avatars. And so what I'm finding is that like you could use these really strong video foundation models that are coming out, like Veo 2. So you can use Veo 2. You can generate a talking avatar of a person, just like kind of generating some type of like hand motions, and then prompt for a green screen, right? And then now you can take that video, pass that into like a lip syncing tool, like the most recent one that just came out a few days ago, I think like 5 days ago now, is called Latent Sync by ByteDance. So you take the VO2 video, you do a pass of latent sync of using like, and then you pass in also the text to speech, which is 11 Labs, which I'm using 11 Labs. And then now you're able to get like these kind of virtual avatars. They're not like entirely convincing, but like I could see it being used to like maybe potentially create like these virtual influencers to just create a lot of content. So yeah, I'm really drawn by like use cases and trying to like reverse engineer things. And then I guess like the most viral example that I was able to produce was back maybe like a year and a half ago, or like a year and 2 months ago now. There was AI spirals that were going like really viral on Reddit.
Oh yeah, we love that.
And so yeah, the AI spirals. So I figured, hey, you have a really awesome workflow, or somebody was able to make this really awesome thing. And I was like, how do I just make this like easy to use, and like how do I like reverse engineer it? So what I did was, as soon as I saw that on Reddit come up, I think it was like in the morning, like right before work, I got to making like a Hugging Face space, because in my head that was the easiest way at the time to produce something that a lot of people could use for free. And so I put together like a Hugging Face space using ChatGPT, wrote like some diffusers code, wrote a little Gradio app, and then that thing, I put it out on Twitter. It went giga viral.
Oh yeah.
I think it went super viral. People were writing like articles on it. And then that's kind of like just my calling. Just see something that I think is interesting. How do I reverse engineer it? Challenge myself to do it. And then in that, I find growth sometimes, or it's just fun for me, like just reverse engineering the thing. But yeah, right now I've been trying to reverse engineer the virtual influencers, trying to see where I can apply that. And yeah, I guess, as things come up, like I'll just continue to try and reverse engineer it. And then also too, like if you're operating in this like open source adjacent domain, you're also at the whims of like what's being released, right? So right now you're not seeing a lot of like improvements on the image generation side of things as it was like with SDXL. Like the FluxDev ecosystem is not really the control nets aren't that strong. You don't have like the IP adapters, the face adapters, which make a lot of the controllability a lot easier. So right now, like the image generation's kind of slowed down. So as a result, like the workflows for that are kind of being bottlenecked.
Do you think that that'll come around?
Yeah, I think so. I think right now, like the difficulty is that again, I'm not like too heavy on the machine learning side, but my understanding of it is that you have a new architecture, and so there's like some learning curves to getting what previously worked on the prior architectures to the new architectures. And so I think it's just a matter of like the researchers trying to figure out how to get a lot of these use cases to function the same way on the new architecture. So I think that plays a bit into it. And then also too, yeah, like yeah, I mean, there's a whole it's an up and coming field. So there's a whole lot of issues that people are working through or problems that people are working through. So as the community works on it, typically, hopefully the problems get solved, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, ControlNet Illusions was such a fantastic breakthrough. I used it to do a series or a couple of series of zodiac signs and stuff like that. And I think the really remarkable thing, not only for your initial creation of that, but also the adoption of the concept of doing those, you started to see that getting picked up and implemented into just everything that was doing generative imagery and video, and everybody wanted to make that stuff available. I still think that those things are relevant and useful in a really technical way, even if necessarily, or even if that style of image isn't necessarily as like prevalent today and kind of the trends and stuff like that. It was a breakthrough.
Yeah, totally. Like I think, and it was interesting too, because in my opinion, the breakthrough didn't really come from like my end. It was like the breakthrough came from the community, right? Like putting the tool out there, and then people figured out like, hey, I can insert like a selfie of myself, and then all of a sudden I can like hide my selfie into this like Amazon rainforest landscape. And so to me, that's like the big draw of like making the tools accessible and like making them easy to use, is because once you do that, you never really know like what sort of use case emerges from that. And then now you have like the memetics at play, and it's just really crazy to see. Like you had people making like AI Jesus like hidden inside of like the illusions. It is just like, and that was like a super huge Facebook hit. So it's just like really insane. Like the once you lower the barrier of access or barrier of entry, like people just kind of go wild with this generative AI stuff. It's like, a sandbox. But yeah, it's pretty crazy looking back on it.
You know where I still see it?
Where?
Is I see it in QR codes on commercials still.
Interesting, on commercials.
Even to this day. Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll see QR codes that have been pushed through ControlNet Illusions, so that QR code is kind of embedded into the screen, the image, and everything else that they've created there, and it has the style of the surrounding scene. I see it very regularly on like over the top OTT streaming channels and stuff like that, where they're basically like kind of picking up these advertising inserts and stuff like that. I'll see it for I've seen it for a lot of like audiobooks and like audio drama stuff, things like that, where they've kind of created what are definitely like AI imagery and animations and stuff like that. And then there'll be a hold screen at the end and you'll see the QR code on there. For sure. I still see it today. Yeah. I mean, this week I've seen them.
Yeah, dude, it's so crazy. Like it's like the Hugging Face space is not getting like the same usage, but it's sort of this like bottoms up approach where, people build the model And if it's a good enough model, you have like developer adoption, consumer adoption, and then people just like kind of figure out the use cases for it, right? Like it's so fascinating to me. And you really see that a lot with these generative AI systems, right? Particularly, I think, like, so maybe I'll touch a bit about like Glif, what Glif does, and then like how that's like relevant to this point. So what Glif does is it's essentially just a platform so that making generative AI really easy to use, like building with Lego blocks. And so there's this concept of a glyph, and a glyph can have, text to speech, image generation, control nets, anything you really want, like built inside of that glyph. And then it becomes a super simple, like easy workflow to consume or use. So as a result, sometimes I'll go in and like I'll put together these like Comfy UI workflows. Comfy UI is a node-based system to construct like just really interesting things with AI, like getting under the hood and like putting all these things together. And then I'll put it out as a glyph, and then people consume it. And then like things you would never expect people start doing. Like we had this one glyph that we put together. It was like a flux glyph. All of a sudden people started using it for print on demand. And that became like, it blew up. It got us like so many people signing up. They still use the glyph, and they're using it for print on demand. And I mean, that kind of is like a use case that you would think would be big with generative AI. But, now that you have the Flux capability of text generation, these people just got like an insane new tool at their disposal. So, I mean, you never really know like what sort of like use cases will emerge. And that's really the fun thing with Glif too, is like sometimes these things will pop up and you're like, wow, I didn't know so many people were interested in doing this certain thing, and it just kind of goes niche viral. And then, yeah, so that's been pretty interesting to see too.
So let's rewind a little bit. We know what Glif does, but maybe tell us where Glif came from and why.
I recently joined the team, maybe about 6 months ago now. So I can't really touch too much on the story about where it came from and like, yeah, more so like where. But I think like the why is that Fabian and Jamie kind of realized that you could do really amazing things by stitching together these AI systems, meaning like, traditionally, I'll give you an example. Traditionally, like if you're just using like AI image generation, you kind of just get like the images out. But if you combine that with like text to speech, now you can start stitching together these like little reels, right? Or you combine that with, say like even like a remove background feature. Now you can start making like video game assets that you can then put into like a game, right? And so I think like the idea became the future of this space is going to be workflows, right? Putting together these multimedia workflows. And so that kind of like initiated and was the reason for Glif to want to emerge. And now I think you're seeing some things that are really popular on the platform, like people making meme generators. And really what it is it's using a large language model plus an image generation model, right? And so that combination makes the workflow much more customizable and much more relatable, like in terms of the output, right? Like you'll get an output that actually makes sense. And so, yeah, I think we're seeing that today, right? Where the workflows are proving to be very much more powerful than just say the model by itself, if that makes sense.
For sure. The multimodal trend, I think, is really the one that, while people in the space definitely are paying attention, it's the one that hasn't necessarily reached, critical mass, let's say, where you're starting to see all of that development and deployment finally hitting, let's say like the Facebook crowd, for lack of better terms. But I think that when you're looking at kind of the really technical community, we know where those people exist, but they're not necessarily always concerned with like flooding out the world with these creations. They're looking, they're right on the bleeding edge and trying to see what's next. And then they deploy these things, but then they move on because something else catches their eye.
Yeah, totally.
I think we've started to see image generation which I think was very captivating 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, starting maybe 3 years ago, where you started to get reliable creations. That is now just predominant on the meta networks, and we're seeing that community really adopt the tools and deploy their creations that way and be enamored with it the same way that the rest of us were in the past, where personally I'm looking for this multimodal stuff to really kind of push my creativity and push my line of thinking and advance what I can do with the assets that I have currently, so that I can make more dynamic things, right? And that's not to speak down about what's happening in any community, really. It's just what I'm focused on right now. I would love to hear maybe some about in that regard, the roadmap of Glif, where you guys think you're going to go, what we can expect from you, anything you can talk about in that sense.
Yeah, totally. We actually have like a pretty big product release coming soon that I probably can't touch on just yet.
Spill the beans.
Well, maybe I can. So Fabian's been Fabian's been teasing out. It's going to be Glif Chat, and it's essentially sort of very similar to, or in the same like wheelhouse of the multimodal workflows, and it's essentially going to be enabling LLMs with skills or actions to use the generative models. And so from that, you can get like some pretty unique interactive experiences. So I'll give you an example. So I mentioned before, like making game assets with a transparent background. So one of the things I've been hacking on is like the demo is using Flappy Bird, which is a very like simple game. But imagine like you could have Flappy Bird with like any image, or meaning like any bird is any character you want. Say I wanted to be a penguin.
Any IP, really.
Yeah, any IP, really. And so the idea is you do that and you transform these experiences using generative AI, and you can then like from one, what would have been just like one standard experience, like say that one Flappy Bird game, can then become like an infinite amount, right? And then you not only have games, you have like role playing, you have like visual designing aids. So like let's say the simple print on demand stuff that's really popular on the platform. Let's say they wanted like a visual like aid with it, like, okay, I don't like that image, make it this and this and this. And then you have an LLM sort of assist in that workflow. So I think that's the next step that which Glif will be taking, which I'm pretty excited for. We've been having some really awesome like internal success from it. And I think it's, again, like just leaning more heavily into this like multimodal future, right? It's like, why just restrict yourself to one model? I mean, they're really, the models are like insane. To think that you would have these like where we were 3 years ago, I mean, I think everybody would be super happy with where we're at in terms of like the able to generate text, like the photorealism's like nuts. But, combining that with like 11 labs, or combining that with, I don't know, just a lot like an LLM, like I mentioned, you just really are able to create some like really awesome and interesting things. So yeah, I think like the future of Glif is like to continue to lean heavily into the thing that's worked for us, which is multimodal.
Absolutely. So let's hear any things that we haven't touched on, any ideas that you feel are important, things that people should be looking at, things we don't know that, really speak to you.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm interested right now is, you sort of see something on Twitter and like there's the appeal to go and just like consume it, which is like most people, how most people function, and even like myself included. But I think like where you can generate like a lot of value for yourself and like others is like really trying to put together like workflows, right, that you think can solve a particular problem, like being more like use case driven. And that's really like the approach that I've been trying to take like with this coming new year, right? Like it's pretty easy to fall into the trap of like just generating things just to generate them, which, maybe if you're doing it for fun, it makes sense. But if you're really trying to like grow your network and like grow the impact that you're having, I'd really encourage people to like share workflows, share things that they're coming up with. Because you might feel that by sharing it, you're like losing value of like something that, you're giving away your idea. But like, I think the reality of it is like, as you share information, you sort of gain back if you're doing it in the right way and you're sharing in the appropriate channels. So I think like that trend has sort of like died. I wouldn't say died out, but it has certainly like been weakened in the space. Like people just aren't really sharing like workflows as much anymore, which makes sense, right? Like because the space is becoming much more like there's a lot more cash in the space now and like investors and stuff like that and like more companies. But the spirit of sharing your process, sharing like what you're trying to create, like sharing your thing, sharing whatever you make is, I don't know, I think greatly impactful, and it just helps push the network forward, right? Like helps push the community forward. So I think that's really what I'm looking for, and I'm like anybody who like is doing this too, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm like always happy to like amplify or like share how I think I could improve it. But yeah, I guess that's one thing.
Very cool. Miguel, thank you for joining me. I appreciate all the insight, the inside track on Glif, your background, and all the rest. Good conversation.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I appreciate you for having me. And if you want to generate multimodal workflows, curious about them, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I'm angry, or X, I should say, Angry Penguin PNG. And yeah, just always feel free to DM me. I actually don't get that many DMs. So yeah, I'm like, I usually reply to them. And if you need any help or anything, yeah, just always happy to help out.